Midlife crisis, myth or reality? What happens? We're going through life, we're moving forward, we're charging along, and then all of a sudden we get a little bit of discontentment, or we get a lot of discontentment. We wonder, what's happening? What's going on with life? We start to feel anxious and wondering what it's all about. What causes that? How can we go from this period of life where we're moving along confidently, everything's going all right, to suddenly things are not going all right? Well, this is what we're going to explore in this podcast.
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to a Pondering Life episode of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own best interest to help others. And today I have back the lovely Alex Darby. Alex, how are you today? I know you've recently had an operation, but you seem to be recovering okay. How have you been?
I've been well. I don't think I can say I've been good because that's a bit weird coming out of hospital 2 weeks ago. But I will be good, and the road to recovery is sometimes a long one, but a very, very, very good one at the same time.
It's lovely to hear that you're recovering well, which is good. Now, we were talking about and we've discussed a number of interesting things, but the topic that come up with for today was midlife crisis, reality or myth.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, with that, and because I think I had a midlife crisis when I was around 20-ish.
Well, it depends. This is why I think it's a really interesting topic, because what is it?
Yeah.
What actually? Because actually, the term was coined by a psychologist who decided that, through working with various clients, decided that when people hit a certain age, which is in the middle of their life, they start to feel their mortality, which can create a kind of crisis effect in terms of, what am I doing with my life? Have I done what I thought I was going to do? What happens if it all goes wrong? What happens if my plan doesn't work? Oh my God. And that's the crisis.
Yeah.
So it actually comes from a psychologist. But my question has always been, does that crisis, because actually our midlife is different for every single person, because midlife is different for women than it is for men because of the hormone impact. And so the other angle of where I was coming from this was, women in midlife are treated very differently than men in midlife. So a woman will start to feel like she is expected by society to slow down and to be less ambitious and to perhaps take a step back, whereas men it just sort of breeze past, really. There's no, men are the silver fox. Women are battling with the hairdressing ounce of grey. Yeah. But of course, men have got their own challenges. But so then the statistics would say that women at an average age of 51, so you've got to go between 45 and 55, they are statistically are in the highest age group for divorce, even though divorce is at a 50-year low. They are the highest group for suicide, now beating the suicide rate of late teens. They are the worst category for addiction, and addiction for women in that age category has quadrupled since 1999.
What sort of addiction?
It's various
Drinking,
addictions.
smoking,
It could be drinking,
gambling.
smoking, shopping, spending,
Mm.
um, all sorts, actually. Anything that you can be addicted to, all your old habits could come back. So if you were a smoker, you might start to
Mm.
smoke again. Which could tie back into the, well, what's the point anyway kind of question, which I hear quite a lot. Then you've
Yeah.
got women, same age group, who 1 in 4 want to quit their job, and 1 in 10 actually do.
Yeah.
And there's one more. What's the other one? Well, and that's quite a lot of stats to go by. So you've got, of course, women at an average age of 51 will be menopausal. And because the word menopause, most people have an allergic reaction to, they don't quite understand what it means. But actually, it's a hormone deficiency. And that's really, if you put it into the factual element of it, it is a hormone deficiency. Estrogen declines. And when estrogen declines, women have an effect which can either, you can breeze past it and not have any emotional wobbles, or you can feel all sorts of awful. But then the thing it will happen to every woman is it will create a risk for heart health and bone health. Yeah. Full stop. So you've got that added element. So my question has always been, midlife, what actually is it? It doesn't need to be a crisis. It doesn't need to be anything, but it is factually a time of life where we have to readjust how we are and how we behave and how we think about what's coming. Yeah. So how do you turn that into a creation rather than a crisis? And is it different for men than women? And is it, well, where is that element for men? I mean, I'm heavily focused on women because I work with women. Yeah. I am a woman who's gone through all of this perhaps at an earlier age, with my early 40s. Yeah. So that's where this came from.
Sorry, no, I was just taking some, because you had some really good points there and some great notes. But I love the point, and this is the one I was writing down just then as you're saying that, was how do we take it to a point of creation as opposed to a negative point? I'm just writing that down, point of creation. Because I was looking up, in doing some research for this, I was looking at what is midlife crisis, because it said I thought I went through one when I was about 20 because I went through all this change. Then I think I went through one about 10 years later as well because I went through all this change. And then when I was looking it up, the meaning of midlife crisis that I found was it's a loss of confidence and a feeling of anxiety or disappointment that can occur early in middle age. And so what I'm reading into that is really, I mean, because you can have loss of confidence and a feeling of anxiety and disappointment at any point, which is probably why I had mine at 20 and 30 when I look at it.
Yeah, I think isn't it about really the fact that you've already experienced all these things, and perhaps lack of confidence comes from the fact that you're thinking, hang on a minute, I've already experienced things like this before. Yeah. Why can't I deal with it now?
Yeah.
Well, so, as you say, by the time you hit your 40s, you've gone through an awful lot. Every human being has experienced a lot in that 40 years.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I wanted to take it further. When I was looking it up, I was going, okay, well, that's what they're saying midlife crisis is, which is basically, it's saying, there's a group of people that have reached the midlife and they're having these feelings of disappointment, that kind of thing. So I went, okay, that's what that is. But really, you could have that at any age, which is, that's why I think I went through those early, because I had those feelings then in relation to my life. And then I was looking up and I went, okay, what's the common reasons that lead to midlife crisis? And it was interesting for men and women; they were very different. And you mentioned menopause, which was one of those. The other, for women, there was also children are suddenly gone, which I can imagine. Yeah, exactly. Lifestyle changes that enable more opportunities, which again, children going, a number of different factors can enable more opportunities, and biological and psychological changes. I was kind of trying to work out how that was different. I mean, menopause would fall under
menopause.
That. Yeah,
menopause.
That's what I was thinking. And then there was questioning having lived up to potential. So they were the top 5 reasons that they said that occur. And the interesting point with that, when you're comparing men and women, was the average length of a woman's midlife crisis is 2 to 5 years. But then when we looked at the men, or when I looked at the men, it was the reasons for men having a midlife crisis was fear of aging,
Mm.
fear of unfulfilling dreams, fear of loss of
Mm.
attraction, fear of
Mm.
illness, fear of death. What's the common factor there for men?
Well, yeah. What's really interesting about that as well is that if you women have a fear of being the carer, of becoming the carer. So actually, that plays into men's fear about illness.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I was looking at
Mm.
that going for men, and for men it was the average length was 3 to 10 years. We obviously learn slower.
Well, come on, it's obvious, isn't it?
I wasn't
We're
going
all
to
just
say it, but since you've gone there, and that's one thing I pride on this show. We're not PC. We can say what we feel.
Well, I think women, the statistics will. If you want to go off, I always like to get the facts and then look at where the facts are coming from. And women, when they pass 55, they come out of all the danger zones. But up until 55, they're in the danger zone. The wall, I call it the wall. It's the wall of stuff that everybody faces.
Yeah.
But women face a health challenge where perhaps men don't, which is the menopausal side of things.
Is that because men we avoid going to the doctor and things like that, and then all of a sudden we got to face up to it and go, okay, I don't.
Yeah,
don't
but
really
I mean, I guess actually part of that would be how do you stop doing that? Because how many lives would be saved if men just got themselves the doctor?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's really, really true.
Well, I mean, and that would probably eliminate one of those reasons for a midlife crisis. There's an argument for that. I mean, certainly if you've got the money, you can have a Ferrari. You know, being a bit facetious.
The thing is, though, if you've got the money to have a Ferrari, why wouldn't you have the money to then pay for an on-demand doctor that's your doctor? You know, there's all sorts of things you can do. I think this whole fear about going to the doctor, I think, plays into the fear of dying. So if I don't face it, then I don't fear it, but then you end up dying anyway.
So
maybe too soon.
That's an interesting loop, isn't it? What do you think it is at that point? I mean, because I've got fear of dying. Is that? I mean, is it because you're young and you think you're bulletproof and you don't really think about it, but then you get to a certain point, a certain age, and that aging starts kicking in. You mentioned before the recovery side of things from the operation was not the same as for earlier operations, and I was talking about one of my friends who had a baby much later in life and found that was very different to when they were younger. Do you think that sort of thing? You've got that comparison to go, oh, maybe I'm not going to live forever.
Well, yeah, I think there is something about your kids growing up. I mean, my daughter's 15, so she's not grown up, left home grown up, but she's her own person. So there's no sort of, I'm still doing running around at school and all that kind of stuff. But there's a time span to that now, because she'll be driving in a year and a half's time, really, if she passes the test. So I think there's an element of something happens with us that I still don't know the answer to this question, apart from the fact that something happens to us when we hit a certain age within the 40s realm, where we just think, have I done what I thought I was going to do in life? Because if I haven't, then that's where the panic comes from. And that's where the crisis thinking comes from, of what happens if. The number one thing that keeps women awake at the moment, which has probably been the same for ever and a day, is what if it doesn't go to plan? What if my life does not go to the plan that I thought it was going to go to? When your 20s and 30s are all about career and cash and family and whatever else. It's all go, go, go. 40s, I thought would be different, but it wasn't. It was still go, go, go. But then I'm different because I had cancer and it changed everything, and I had my crisis then in all of it. So I'm a bit ahead of the curve on it. But I think it's what if this does not work? What am I going to do? And what I don't want to look back on my life and think, why did I not do all those things? Because I read this amazing book. I may have said this before. I read it when I was having chemotherapy. Probably the weirdest book in the world to read when you've got cancer. But the top 5 regrets of the dying, by a woman called Bronnie Ware, who was a palliative care nurse, and she wrote this book, and it kind of changed how I thought about my own life in terms of, I don't want to look back on my life when it's me dying, if we all get there in the end, and think, why did I not do that? And the number one regret was, why did I not do what I wanted to do because of somebody else? There's either fear of hurting someone else or making it someone else feel jealous or left out or small or whatever it is that we think in our crazy brains. So why did I not do what I wanted to do? And I think we hit that point probably in our 40s, which is where the crisis, I think, comes from.
That's interesting. So what you were saying is you're wondering you don't want to have regrets because of someone else. Is that, did I?
But that's her number one, the number one regret of people she spoke to who were dying was that I didn't do what I wanted to do with my life because of somebody else.
Yeah.
So it was and we all have, I mean, I'm a coach and I coach many people who say they're too worried to do X, Y, or Z because of what people might think of them.
Yeah. That's some pretty powerful way to consider. Didn't do what you want to do because of someone else. That really means, I mean, if you're thinking that way, it must be because, that's why I'm interpreting it, and be because that you're thinking that you have been living your life according to someone else's rules, not to your own.
Well, because just look at the real basic of I run an online business.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like social media. But it is a thing that I've got to do for my business because that's how people get to know about me. But how long did I spend not doing social media for my business because I was too scared of what people might think of me? That's a really good example. And the business coaching I've done with numerous people have all been, I don't want to do video, I'm going to look stupid, people are going to laugh at me. What about all those people I used to go to school with, they're going to judge me? What about all those la la la? I say, well, so you're not doing what you want to do because of other people, even if you know those people or not. How many people on social media get trolled by people? So do they stop because of somebody else they don't even know who's a faceless keyboard warrior? Or do they just carry on because they're putting good out into the world? I think that's how I see that. Then you could go to the extreme of, I've worked with women who have not been able to lose weight because it makes people around them feel uncomfortable because the other people around them can't lose weight themselves. So they stay how they are because they don't upset the people around them. Same thing.
It's interesting that you say that because I've found it fascinating for a long time, as long as I can remember, and I maybe didn't know this, but I'll be in a supermarket and we're walking in, and I'll be walking this way, and we just come around the corner together, and someone come the other way, and we won't hit each other or anything like that, but they'll go, "Oh, sorry," and it's like,
yeah,
well, you haven't bumped into each other. What are you saying sorry for? I say hello. Please meet. And so, I watched that and go, what is going on there? That you're apologizing for just walking. We haven't bumped into each other or anything like that. And you're apologizing. And I think that's fascinating what you're saying from that perspective. And I guess I'm kind of, because I look at that and I know there was times where I didn't do things and I was, wanted to, to impress other people, that kind of thing. And I think I was quite lucky. My mum was always, and I hated it as a kid, she was always saying, doesn't matter what other people say, do what you want.
Yeah.
And she would be, and this was before beanies were cool, she'd wear these beanies that are horrible and I hated them. And she goes, it doesn't matter what other people think. And I'm going, yes, it does. I hate it. Take it off. You're embarrassing me. But I think that foundation sort of kicked in fairly in one of my earlier midlife crises. As I said, I had them early. And I think it was the one, and it was certainly, it became very unconcerned about what people think. I believe I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm a good person inside. I separate behaviors from, I don't always, I make mistakes. That's, and I don't treat that. And I think I've given that example before where I yelled at someone at a wedding because they parked where the bride was going to park and they didn't know. And I look back at that and I kind of, I know it wasn't the right behavior, but I don't feel guilty about it. I mean, if I was to do it again now, I would certainly do it very differently.
Yeah.
And so this is where I'm wondering: is it a case of we need to just really like ourselves and just go, okay, this is right for me. This is what I need to do. And
well, yeah, I think that's absolutely. If you would simplify it right down to what the core of what it is, because the only reason why, if you stop yourself doing something because of somebody else, what's it saying about you? What do you believe to be true about yourself to not do something?
Valuing yourself massively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly, because you're putting someone else's value ahead of your own. Whereas it's interesting, actually. I had I'm part of a different group, and there was sort of ages ago, a long time ago, I was part of a group of people. We're all working towards it's all business goals, business.
Yeah.
And this one individual had a complete freak out, decided that he was better than everyone else. He was better. His business was better. He was going, and in a fit of craziness, he ended up coming back looking a bit stupid. But sort of, we had the conversation of, regardless of whatever state your business is in compared to anyone else, it doesn't mean you're better. It just means that your business is in a different stage. That is it.
Yeah.
Full stop. There is no better or worse. No one is better than anyone else. There is not such thing as better than other people. You know, the richest people in the world aren't better than us. They're just doing something different.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's interesting. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
As I say, that's where it can come back down to you're devaluing yourself for other people, because you are yourself saying they must be better than me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy when you say it out loud, isn't it?
Well, it is. That's what I wonder about. And I think I changed, because I changed a long time ago. You know how we all have, we look at people we admire and go, I want to be like that. You know, people playing tennis might want to be like a famous tennis player, that kind of thing. In business, you have people and you go, I want to be like that. And for me, I changed a long time ago, and I said, I just want to be. I'm the best Damien Andrews. That's it. that's my rule. That's my measure.
Yeah.
Am I better today than I was yesterday? And that's it.
Yeah.
And I might see other people do something, and I don't say I want to be like that person. I go, oh, that behavior is cool. I could learn from that, and I could incorporate that in my way.
You can that's exactly. It's you aren't. I was interested in you're not copying other people. You're copying a process. The process that they've used to succeed in something that you want to succeed in. It's copying a process. It's not copying them, because you can't copy them because you're different.
Exactly.
Even if I wear the same clothes as somebody and I do the same job, we may have the same process, but we're doing it completely differently. And that's because we are unique.
Yeah, because you can't copy someone else because you don't have the same background, the same experience, and it won't work. You have to integrate it. So that's why when I look at a behavior, I go, okay, that's, I could use that. How would I do that? And it's obviously going to be my way, but it's more about achieving the outcome as opposed to being that person. And that's where, because when we look at that, this whole midlife crisis, which I think young people go through that. It's not called midlife crisis. If we're talking about,
no, it's just.
Yeah, I know there's the chemical thing, but we're talking about loss of confidence, feeling of anxiety and disappointment. If we take the age out of it, and obviously for women there's menopause, that kind of thing, that's a biological thing that affects people.
But that's fixable though. I've got to say that if you have an iron deficiency, you take iron supplements, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So if you have a estrogen deficiency, you would start using estrogen, which is called HRT, and which has got all sorts of crazy myths and lies and theories around it. And apparently, there was a whole big study back in 2002 that discredited HRT, saying it gave you a high risk of breast cancer, which has now been discredited. So there's a whole load of scaremongering going on with it. But I've had breast cancer twice, and I take HRT because my estrogen had declined so much due to surgery and chemotherapy that I was I was more crazy lady than I was Alex Darby. So there needed to be something. I was so deficient and needed help. I don't regret it for a minute. It makes a massive difference. Just like I take magnesium supplements and vitamin D supplements, because I believe that we can't produce those things ourselves. So, menopause.
From that perspective, what you mentioned there about iron as well. I actually take, because I know I had a slight I was lacking some energy. I was really struggling, and spoke to a couple of people about it, and they said, it could be an iron deficiency, but it was like, well, the standard iron tablets were a little bit, they didn't have much in it, but there was the women's iron tablets, which had a lot more in it. So I grabbed them.
Yeah.
Made a massive difference. Just made a complete difference.
There you go. You see. Well, that's a great example of what I'm saying, is that menopause is a time of life, but it's called a time of life because your estrogen's declining. It's women are kind of ruled by their hormones in terms of menstruation, menopause, and the bit in the middle. So that particularly when you're in the fertile years. So that's kind of, you go right back when we were here on this earth. Women's role was to have kids and create a family tribe and to nurture and everything. That's what women were. That's what their key role was.
Yeah.
So I see menopause as a hormone deficiency, and actually the part of it that's really exciting is that how can you create a different life on the back of all these feelings of low confidence.
Is it something you could plan ahead? Because there's some work that we're doing here at the moment with another person I'm working with, and with her, we're looking at from the perspective of it, because you mentioned like from a woman's perspective.
Yeah.
When you go through that transition, but from a setup perspective, if we go, okay, well, this is the path of life here, that we set things up in a way where you can have children, you can work, you can balance that nicely because the family unit is working well, because that's part of the component we're working on, and with the employer that we're all working together. Because one of the things we were looking at was there's a lot of women that miss out on having babies now because they've spent so much time on their career, and then after 29, that's when it starts to become difficult to have.
Yeah.
Some people it's not, but that's the medical research shows that
35. It's 35. It's 35.
It really starts to go downhill from there. But they were saying from 29,
right, late
it starts
20s.
the prime period is from late teens to 29, and then it goes down from there. And so we're looking at going, well, how do we create a structure so that we can plan for that, where family, when we're treating it as the family can have children earlier, still have that career, balance that nicely, without having extra stress and all that kind of stuff that would go with that. And then when you're talking about, as you come through, okay? I think you paused a little bit, but I was still talking, so hopefully it's still recording.
Okay.
But we're looking at a way of going, how do we make this balance in it? And I was just, now that you're talking about that, going, well, okay, if we're actually planning it that way, we're planning it in a way so that actually this whole baby thing happens earlier. Then you're able, because the children are older, younger, you're back in the prime of working, in the prime of your life, and the whole midlife crisis thing might disappear now that I'm thinking about that.
Well, or the other way to turn it on its head is why can't any time be the prime of your life? There is no reason why your hormones have to rule what is your prime of life. It's whether it's just having knowledge behind what is actually happening to you, so you can make an informed decision. Yeah, I think because I know from women I've spoken to, because I was 37 when I had my daughter. So to prove your rule, I had to have IVF to have her, because my fertility had declined so much. Yeah. So that proves that rule. Yeah. But then, because I went into menopause at 42, when I was talking about it with my other friends who were the same age or maybe younger, they were like, I don't want to know. Do not tell me. I am not interested. Because that time of life scares the living daylights out of me. So there's a thing about knowledge is power. So you can understand what's coming, and you can then understand what your options are. Because the biggest thing I found is that women suddenly feel all these things and don't know what the hell is happening to them. But if they knew that if they could just tap into something and say, this is what's going on, and I know I've got all these options available to me, so I can carry on being me again. Because I was menopausal at 42. I started my own business at 46. So I don't think that our prime of our life is anything other than what we decided to be. It's a choice, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was looking at it more when I was saying prime, I meant from an employee employee
And why? Well,
perspective.
that's an employee's decision to change
Yeah.
how they look at it, because actually, women
Mm.
of any age have got, especially women who've had, women just of any age who've experienced a lot are valuable to the workplace. And actually, at the moment, especially in the UK, women of a menopausal age, sort of 45 onwards,
Yeah.
there's a massive hole in the UK workforce of they're just leaving it because the employers aren't getting it. So it's really down to the employer to get on board with the fact that this is a thing. It's so
So when so
easy
you're saying
for
that,
an employer to do it.
yeah, so when they're you're saying there's a lot of women leaving around that 45 age. What's causing that? What do you think is
Well,
causing?
I think menopause affects women that it's such, with everything.
Yeah.
Some women can go through menopause and they just don't really feel a thing, and they might get a few hot flushes, but that's it. But what they don't appreciate is how much their health is at risk going forward with heart and bone health. And that's where we all need to be educated, because I didn't know that either until I researched it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of women who just really struggle. They struggle emotionally. Their confidence hits the floor. They physically struggle, and they suddenly feel like they've had an alien take over their body, and they just can't deal with what they used to be able to deal with. And they have those moments of, I've done things that are harder than this. What is going on with me? And it's having the support of someone going, right, okay, this is what's going on, and these are your options. Because a woman can choose not to have HRT, but choose other things to do, which won't be as impactful, but will still help. But it's just, for me, it's so black and white. It's so night and day. It's so logical. This is factually what's happening. This is what you can do about it. Then you make a choice and you get on with it.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see it all. It's like a process.
But is that 45 age group as well, where a lot of the children have left home, so to speak, and they've got other options? They're going, well, I don't need to work anymore. I can go out and do other things.
Well, if women are having children later, then when they hit 45, they've still got young kids.
Yeah. No, that's.
So that kind of flies in the face of that. Traditionally, when a woman was 45, her kids would have left. Yeah. And then she would face the choice of, okay, I can now go back into the workforce and do more. And maybe that in itself creates anxiety about, well, what can I do?
Is it a case, because I was reading as well, that part of the reason that that we had these the two parent working families was, a lot of it was financial necessity, and that was because from a demographic perspective, we had all the baby boomers entering the workforce, so there was an abundance of workers, hence wages didn't go up. Standing of living did, the cost of living did, I should say, and as a result, they needed to go to work. But now we're moving to the other side of that, where people don't, and certainly the pandemic has helped out, that it's shown that we can live a different lifestyle, and we're comfortable with that. Do you think that plays part of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that if you look at the roles that I've done the research on this in the UK market. The number of roles that women occupied from ages 45 to 55 were in hospitals, nurses, doctors, even. In caring situations, in schools, all the areas that were really, really, really impacted by, everything was impacted by the pandemic, but hospitals, definitely, schools, definitely. And then there'll be an awful lot of manual jobs, cleaners, chefs, all of that kind of people who cannot work from home. They suddenly had to work from home and maybe started to learn to do some other stuff. And they've just come right out of the workforce. And I've spoken to a number of people who it impacted them so much. They sold their house, downsized, became mortgage free, and made different choices because they didn't want to feel that financial pressure anymore. So yeah, I'm fairly sure that we have a number of years yet until it normalizes. if it does,
But
actually.
will it? Will it? I mean, if
I
people have
don't
made
know.
that decision
Mm,
and they've gone, okay, this is a better lifestyle, and
mm,
I seem to that seems to be a lot of the dialogue out there at the moment, that people are more focused on having a better quality of lifestyle than, as you say, worrying about what other people think and impressing the Joneses with, this big
yeah.
house, and they're going, oh, well, I actually, my lifestyle's better if I actually sell up. And I know in Australia, there's a lot of regional areas, and started to notice there's a lot of developments happening in regional areas where houses are being built, because it's a lot cheaper, but
Mm,
the income's roughly the same. So you
mm,
get a much better quality lifestyle. You're not stuck in traffic, or stuck on a
mm.
train or something
Oh
like
yeah.
that with it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The commute is gone.
Yeah.
I think it's most people. Everyone's got a dog now.
I'm out of luck. I got a lizard. I don't have a dog.
Well, there you go. Each their own.
It's a lot quieter. And I can leave it for a week and not have to worry about feeding it. Go away.
Yeah. Well, there's the what this is really interesting, because this could be a whole new phenomena about midlife, actually,
Mm.
is that perhaps the choices that people are making in midlife now are directly impacted by what the pandemic did to them.
Mm.
The maybe if the pandemic hadn't have happened, we would all still be doing what we were doing, and we were all still feeling all sorts of low confidence and anxiety, but just getting on with it. But the pandemic has shown us that we can do things differently. Maybe that's part of it as well.
Well, what about this? I mean, the confidence side of things, because that we mentioned that at the start, and you've just brought it up again. When we're
Mm.
looking at the confidence, because confidence isn't something you have. It's not something can have. You don't go to the shop
Everyone
and
has
buy
it.
it.
Everyone
Yeah,
has it. Everyone has it. We've all
yeah,
got it. It never goes away, but it's like a
yeah,
muscle. You've got to practice it.
yeah. Well, the where I was going with that was it's something that you do. You behave confidently. You don't
Mm.
have. It's not a. It's a noun that describes a behavior.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
I was more. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is, I
yeah.
think,
Well,
what you're
yeah.
referring to as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
completely. So it's not, like you say, it's always there. It's
Yeah.
available to anybody. It's not something
Yes.
that you have. Yes, anybody can be confident. It is not a you
Mm.
can be, you can't be, but it's something you've got to practice doing.
Yeah. And it's a state of mind, really. That
Yeah,
like you say, it's a muscle that you practice doing. But the more you
yeah.
do it, then in any situation you can behave. Because that was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, was from one of my mentors. Greg Larson is the chairman and managing director of BP. I was having a struggle with something, and I used to ask him for advice, and I'd send him a text message, and he'd respond 2 or 3 days later, which I think was deliberately to make me think about it first.
Mm,
Which, but this one time I was asking for advice because I was going into this meeting, and it was coming up, and I was a bit concerned, but his words back to me was, Damien, I think you should trust yourself that you'll handle it well in the situation.
yeah.
I'm paraphrasing slightly. That wasn't the exact words, but it was the
What
words
you've
to that
taken away
effect.
from it.
It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so just trust yourself that you'll do okay.
Mm,
And that's, to me, really what confidence is that trust in yourself. How do you
yeah.
think we'd learn that? How do we think we'd learn that trust?
I think it's like everything, isn't it? You have to show. You have to have examples of when it's worked for you, so
Mm,
you've done it. So you can. I think people struggle with confidence, as in, I'm too scared to go and do that because I'm going to look stupid, which ties in the confidence piece, but also you're putting yourself below other people. So
mm,
the sort of fear of what other people think of you. But I think when people have got examples that they've done themselves that has shown them their version of confidence for themselves, then they can go back to that and go, I've done that before, I can do it again. And it's just practicing it, doing it that way. And because it's a daily thing, it's not something that I always recommend to people. They do something daily that builds that
mm.
feeling within them. Then they don't have to then go searching for it.
I love that, builds that feeling. Because I was wondering from that perspective, when you say builds that feeling, because it's one thing to say, okay, and I always wonder, is it right to tie it to an outcome? Because you can be really confident at something, and things come out of left field, and you completely mess it up.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's
and
fine.
and that's what I'm wondering, is it's like that ability to go, okay, being okay with things not going the right way, going,
Yeah, that's
if it
huge.
messes
That's
up,
huge.
I'll get up and do it again.
And
Or
that's confidence. That's confidence, because that's having Just having the confidence to go, you know what, I tried. It didn't quite work that time, but I'm going to try something different.
Yeah.
So that's when you go back to all the amazing examples of the light bulb. And, you know, if it didn't keep on going, we wouldn't have light, and all the wonderful things that people have done. The great quote from Michael Jordan, when in an interview asked, do you ever worry about missing a shot? And he said, well, why would I worry about a shot I've not yet taken? And just moved on. I thought, well, it's always stuck with me, that quote. Because I think, of course, why do we worry about things that may or may not work?
Yeah.
When actually you've got the confidence to do it anyway. If it doesn't work, you just learn from it and keep on going. That's it. But it's practicing doing that.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, for me, it's just funny how sports analogies really work for us. But that there was the one about Babe Ruth. And he's remembered for all his home runs that he's hit, but he also he got struck out more than anyone else in history, and people didn't remember that.
My Instagram quote is a Babe Ruth quote tomorrow.
Is it? Oh, there you go.
Yes, it is. Yes.
One of my favourites is from Pooh Bear, where Pooh Bear asks Piglet, says, "What day is it?" And Piglet says, "Today," and he goes, my favourite day."
Oh, very good.
I love that quote. It's like, today is my favourite day. This is really cool.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering from that perspective, is that a case of, because I remember as a kid, or probably a teenager, like early 20s, I can't remember the specific incident, but I remember there's been times where you're going somewhere and you trip over, and all of a sudden you might not fall on the ground or whatever, but you're kind of all embarrassed because you fell over.
Mm.
And now the attitude that I have, which just happened, whenever something goes wrong and there's people around, I go, and jump up and do things, look at me, and treat it as a celebration. It's like, and people go, good on you. And it becomes, and it's just an attitude that I chose to do. I didn't have to work at it or anything. I just said, I'm just not going to be bothered by that anymore. Is it that simple? I mean, I found it that simple.
It actually is. Yeah. It actually is that simple. But my God, do we complicate it? That's the problem. It is actually that simple. It is making a choice. Because ultimately, everything that we do is based on what we think. That's everything. Every single thing we do is based on our thoughts. Do you imagine we've got between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those thoughts are naturally negative. So we've got filters. We've got a filter, haven't we, to filter out what we don't need. Yeah. But if you imagine we've got negative thoughts that we attach to, and then they're recycled and recycled and recycled day after day after day after day, then that's where we become low in confidence. We feel shame about failure. We use all these big words that have an emotional impact on us, which actually all we have to do is make a choice to think something different. That's it. It is as simple as that, but really hard to do.
Is it a case of you've just got to start and just remind yourself? Because I know from my perspective, it's become, I don't have bad days at all, ever. I can't remember the last bad day I had. I've had shit things happen, which other people go, what? And it's like, and I'm going, so what? Big deal. Let's deal with it and move on. How is this going to help me, or just move on? And because I remember someone saying, it's like, had you ever, I think it was in a seminar or something, they said, have you ever had the experience, had this experience where during that time you thought it was the most traumatic experience of your life, and then some years later you look back on it and go, that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. And the point that they said after that was a bit that was profound. They said, why wait several years to have that epiphany? Why not just do it straight away?
Absolutely. It's what I say all the time. So what I say, having cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it changed my life completely. And then I get to the place of, so why did I have to wait to get a life-threatening illness to make me change my life? And I started my coaching business on that principle. How do you get people to make the changes now without the cancer? Yeah. Or the divorce, or the whatever it is that happens that makes people go, oh, hang on a minute, things aren't quite working out. How do you get people to that place? And actually the true fact is you can only get people to that place when they're willing to be there. That's it. You can't force anyone.
A friend of mine said that you learn through pain until you evolve to the point of learning through joy.
Mm,
which I thought
that's a
was
good one.
pretty profound.
Yeah.
Because, and
That's a choice. That's a choice, surely. That's a
yeah,
choice, isn't it?
yeah.
You
Well,
choose to find the joy rather than the pain.
yeah. Well, and that's where, because I mean, and I'm wondering, is that a point of listening as well? Because when we look at children all the time listen, they're open to information, but as we become adults, we shut off.
Mm,
And so we don't see things. We don't, we take our beliefs as being real, which they're
mm.
not. They're just some thought that you've repeated over and over
It's just a
again.
thought. I know,
Yeah,
it's mad, isn't it? A lot of our beliefs are other people's thoughts, they're not even our own.
very
They're
true.
the things that we picked up from all sorts of places and
Yeah,
people. And that's the thing, where is that? I'll do something and then someone will say to me, where's that come from? I go, I have no idea. What was I thinking when I thought that? What was my brain doing when that happened? And I realized it's a belief that's not even mine.
yeah.
It is that, so I can stop thinking it. I can stop believing that and start believing something different. I mean,
Mm.
that's the joy. That is actually the joy of life, of being a human being, is we have the ability to change our thoughts.
Is it a case when we're talking about the midlife crisis then, when we put those together and we say, well, okay, we've been living someone else's life, we wake up. Because I wonder this, I look at my dad, for example, well, my dad's generation.
Mm,
And my dad worked for the same organization his entire life. He started as an apprentice and went up and educated himself as he was going through, but he stayed in the same organization because that was
mm.
what was expected. Didn't
Yeah,
have to make a choice.
yeah.
Then you look at my generation, and I'm 50, but look at my
Yeah.
generation. We're in the
Our
category.
generation, then. I'm in
Yeah.
the same generation as you.
Oh, you only look 28. Come.
Thank you. I'm actually older than you, believe it or not.
I've always made it a rule never to ask a lady her age.
I'm 52.
And if some extremists out there are going to hate me for that, that's fine. I don't read my comments anyway. But from that, I was looking at it. I was thinking about that a lot, and linking this to this midlife crisis situation, and go, okay, we've done what we were expected to. My dad did that, and my dad's happy with his life. He went through a crappy period, and I wrote him a nasty letter and said, "Get your shit together." And he read these books, I think including Think and Grow Rich and stuff like that. And yeah, he did, and he got his life together. So that was pretty cool.
Very good. Very
he
good.
reminds me of that, which is nice. He reminded me of that. I was going through a tough period a number of years ago, and my dad was really supportive. And I was on a train. I was in a suit, heading into the city, and I just sent a message to my dad saying, "Look, I really appreciate the support you've given me. I wanted to thank you." And the bastard wrote back. He wrote, "No, I should thank you for that letter you wrote to me all those years ago that helped me get my life together. And it's the least I can do." Because I then started bawling my eyes out on this train in a suit. That's why I said the bastard wrote back, because it was just like, oh my God. No, and I say that with, as you can tell, lots of love, because it was amazing that but from that perspective, what I'm getting to was with getting sidetracked there with a different digress. ADD's kicking in. I've never been tested, so I don't know for sure. Oh, fire! No, anyway. The people listening on the audio going, "What the hell are these two on?" But I always wondered, because I looked at my dad and going, he didn't have to make that decision. It was kind of, he had a secure job. It was a big organization, state run originally, and then became privatized. But he had a career all the way through. It was didn't have to do that. Was able to look after the family, all that kind of stuff. And then we moved to my generation, where we have choice. We don't have to stay in that same job, but we haven't been taught how to make that choice. No,
it's so interesting. So interesting. Really interesting. You absolutely bang on. My parents slightly different actually, but my husband's parents, same company all their life. That's it. Just that, and never made the choice, never had to make the choice, and perhaps expected the same for him as well.
Yeah.
And so he has not followed that route, and he has moved around and done things because he's made choices to do that. But I was with the same company for 20 years. So, I mean, why did I often look back and think, why did I do that? because but I don't think I'd been taught to not do that. It was only when a headhunter contacted me and was really interested in me and then stopped when I said how long I've been doing what I'm doing. He says, oh my God, you're almost unplaceable because you've been with the same company for so long. And I was absolutely horrified. I said, oh, but I thought this was the right thing to do. I thought that longevity in a company meant that, you know, you were full of stability. And he went, no, it's just boring. It's really boring. And I thought, oh my God, you're completely right. This is just really dull. What a lack of imagination we've got if we just stick with the same people.
And that's what I was wondering from this midlife crisis perspective. We get to the point, and for the people that actually get there in midlife, they've gone, okay, and you mentioned this at the start, they're doing it because that's what's expected of them. And then they get to this point of where, and that's why I was looking at it from, you know, the women are 2 to 5 years and men 3 to 10 years, because women listen more, so that they'll be paying attention and going, well, actually what I can do is this, and they start to go through that process of learning how to make the choice for themselves. And I was just wondering, was that the process? And do we need to be teaching people earlier on, this is how you choose what's right for your life? I know I do it with my son. I look at, even with his grades at school, I said, what grade do you want to get? Where's your standard that you want to set? And he's 14. I mean, I said that years ago to him. I said, you set the standard. What grade do you want? It's your life. You mess it up, don't blame me. You can't sit in a psychologist and say, it's my dad's fault. He was always telling me what to do. But he'd probably backfire and you go to the psychologist and say, it's my dad's fault. He didn't tell me what to do. He gave it choice to me.
Well, yeah, I think we have a responsibility for our kids, definitely, to put it back to them. I do the same with my own daughter. I think I was talking to someone else about my theory with parenting. For me, is just because we have them doesn't make them ours. So they are their own people straight away, and that's a unusual perspective when you see the majority of parents want to live their lives through their kids as they get older. Yeah, and it's not good.
The helicopters.
Yes, which doesn't work, and that's where you get the empty nest syndrome. Because if you've been living your life through your kids, and your kids do leave when you're in your late 40s, what do you do now? Yeah, it's like, okay, well, where do I go now? What do I do? And that's a real problem because they haven't prepared. But then for the women who or people, I think that it's really interesting with the kids thing, actually, because I wonder what percentage of the population have a midlife crisis who have been parenting in that way.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I
wonder if there's a difference. I wonder if there's a bit of a sort of, well, the midlife crisis for you will be like this if you follow the yes and no.
So I can't answer because I have a shared parenting.
No, I can't either.
Yeah, because I know what it's like not to have anyone around, and I like it. I can do my dumping.
Well, see, I can't answer. Yeah, I can't answer because I lived. My mum died when I was 15, and I did my own thing from then. I've worked since I was 16, and done all sorts of creative ways of making money, and making things and selling things, and all sorts of being, And I started my own business in my 40s when I was officially in my midlife crisis, if I was having a crisis. So I've done things really differently. But I do wonder whether there's the reason why there is a crisis is because there may be a big part of the population don't do things differently. And maybe that's the problem.
Well, that's why I was coming back to that point of teaching people how to make their own choices, allowing them to. And I know I've done that with my son. I've literally let him, metaphorically, let him fall off a cliff. I've seen that he's going to, this is going to hurt. And I stood back and said, I was like, I've told you in my mind. I said, told him, don't do that. And then he's gone and done it. And I'm watching. And it's like,
because you learn by experience, don't you? You don't learn by someone telling you. So you learn. You
don't do that.
Yeah, well, you do absolutely. I think that the other thing that keeps coming to my mind is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So the people who don't want to learn how to do it differently because they don't want to do it differently. Perhaps that's part of the reason why there's a lot of people lying awake at night thinking, what if it doesn't work out? Because they've hit the point where they've got to do things differently and they don't know how, but they don't know how to learn.
That's the point I was getting to. This whole point
Yeah,
of learning and having that experience of knowing how to make these choices for yourself, as opposed
yeah,
to someone telling you. Because a lot of
yeah.
times we fall back
Living.
and that's,
Mm.
I mean, I'm going to offend all the clairvoyants out there, but it's where I feel that a lot of people go to. And not saying I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but a lot of the times people go there for guidance because they don't know how to make a decision yourself. I'm like,
Mm.
I don't need to go and see a clairvoyant. I know where I'm going. I know exactly where I'm
Yeah.
going, what I'm
Well,
doing. So I don't need to ask
yeah.
someone for that. I mean, I'm not. I said I don't know whether it's true or not, and I'm not going into that point. Maybe it is, but I don't need to ask someone to tell me what my life has got in store for me because I've chosen.
Because you are deciding for yourself, and you know how to plan, and you know how to take action, and you know how to take action in accordance by your own values
Mm.
and theories, and you're not bothered about what other people think about you. And
Ooh, yeah.
that is a great place to be.
But you mentioned there about your own values. So I mean, that comes back to knowing who you are.
Yes, every single time.
Yeah. Because I mean, how does someone get to know who they are? For me, I mean, I have a different philosophy on that. But
Go on, you share it. I got you go first.
I opened my mouth, didn't I? Well, I mean, because I was looking at that, and maybe I watched Star Wars too many times, but they're talking about the Force, and it's like sometimes it controls you, sometimes you control it. But I was from that perspective of going, because, and I look at it. I remember I was doing a job, and it was really manual in the sense of it was spreadsheeting, and they had these spreadsheets that didn't export properly, and so columns didn't line up, and they had to do it manually. And we're talking tens of thousands of things that had to be sorted out manually. But I treated it as a game. I went, okay, how can I make this fun? How can I try and do this? And I found ways of sorting it to make it easier. And I had fun doing it. And that's where I look at that from that perspective and going, I wasn't doing, was I doing what I love? I don't know,
Mm.
but I was loving what I was doing at that
Mm.
moment.
Good
And
choice.
because, and it was, so I was looking at that going, is it when we're talking about who we are, is it recognizing that you like yourself, and whatever you're doing you'll find a way of enjoying it, because that's pretty much how I do things.
Mm.
There's things that I don't really want to be doing sometimes, and I go, well, I need to do it, so I'm going to have fun doing it. and
Mm.
and so that's my it's not about finding who you are, it's choosing to be you
Just
and enjoying
choosing
what
to
you're
be who
doing.
you are.
Yeah.
I think there's, yeah, I think I love that. I think that's because you're playing to your natural strengths, which
Mm.
is I just want to enjoy this. I want to enjoy everything that I'm doing in the day, and even if it's something I don't really want to do, I'm going to put the joy back into it. It's what you're sort of
Yeah.
saying, I think.
And because
So
it
there's,
was funny how and now I was making these linkages because I mean, we know that when your dopamine makes you feel happy, what's not so much talked about is you just have to think a happy thought and your body starts producing dopamine.
yeah, yeah,
And then I
yeah,
was linking that back to it was the first feature length animated movie, um, Snow White, and they're
yeah,
cleaning the house and they're saying whistle while you work.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's like they probably didn't understand dopamine, all that thing, but I was looking at going,
It's always been there.
it's always been there.
Hmm.
And again,
My
like you
dad's
mentioned before, we
it's always been
overcomplicate. We
there.
take things that are easy. And I was looking again, I've heard this somewhere before. They went, oh, Mary Poppins. And I looked it up and I said, and she says, in every job that has to be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun and snap the job's a game. Spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down.
Mm,
And I
mm,
was looking at it going, it's always been there. So that's what I
mm.
was wondering. Do you have to go on this find yourself journey, or can you just go, I'm going to enjoy what I do?
I think you can just say I'm going to enjoy what I do. If I'm really honest, I think that you can be on these
Can't
find
sell a lot of
yourself
books for that
journeys.
advice, though, can you?
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. I'm not sure how many people will like that very much, but I think yeah, I'm a coach as well, so I'm sort of kind of putting myself out of business. But the
I don't
point
think so,
is you
because I don't
can
think
actually.
people are going to get it straight away. It takes
Well,
a
no, they
while.
don't get it. That's the point. And I have been on find yourself groups
Mm,
and find that I'm so irritated by the end of them because everybody is just finding everything to work out what that means about themselves. And I'm just thinking, what? What? What do you mean? What does it mean about yourself? It just doesn't mean anything. You choose what it means, you move on. And choose what it means, you move on. And stop getting lost in the... But then I had this really interesting coaching call with somebody who was talking about procrastination and fear of failure. And I said, look, if none of these fears existed, what would then you be scared of? Success. You're just scared of succeeding because then you worry about what that's going to mean and what impact's going to have on your life. So you just got to get rid of all, my husband says all the time, get back to first principles. What is it you want to do? Who are you going to be when you're doing it? Go and do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this sort of theory of life, really, isn't it? But then people get caught up in the, well, what does it mean? And of course there are, you know, therapists exist for a really good reason, because there are people who've gone through some shitty stuff that need help. Completely get that. It's a separate thing altogether. But when it comes to confidence and working out who you are and how to find the way for you to feel confident, then it's a doing thing. It's a action, isn't it? It's being in action all the time and doing stuff that creates it.
I love what you said there. You're talking about finding out, what is it you want to do and who do you want to be when you're doing it? It just reminded me of, I was speaking to a lady recently, and she has the question all the time where she says, what would a kind and fair king do?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a pretty powerful statement to actually ask yourself in any situation.
It was an identity thing, isn't it? So I'm training for the New York Marathon this year, which is interesting given that right now I can't train. Yeah. So and last time I ran it's in November. It was in November. Yeah, I've got time yet. Yeah. Did it 5 years ago. Yeah. Did it 5 years ago to celebrate my 5 years free of breast cancer with my husband. And then we decided to do it my 10 years, which is this year, not knowing I was going to have this operation in the middle of it. So it's kind of stalled the process, but we get back on it. But when I think about running at the moment, I actually want to just curl up in a ball and go back to bed. It is not. But then I think, well, okay, what would a runner do? What would a runner think about this? And it changes everything.
Because exactly. I love that you mentioned that, because you mentioned procrastination before as well. And from that perspective, because I don't believe procrastination exists.
No.
It's, if you're sitting there watching Netflix, it's not because you want to be doing something else. It's because you want to be binge watching Netflix. Of course, that's what you're thinking about. And if you're honest with yourself and you look at or you pay attention to what you're thinking about in that moment, you'll notice that you're going there. But if you shift, and because I've done that exercise, I've done it where I've been watching, I'm enjoying this, and then going, what do I really want to achieve? And I go, I want to achieve this. Or is that getting me there? No. And then I start to feel uncomfortable about watching Netflix. And when I start taking action towards getting that objective, all of a sudden the dopamine starts producing, and then I'm on this high, and I've progressed through it. And it's amazing how you find all this energy. It's the same token as well. Like, you might have had a really hard day at work, and you come home and you're tired and you're exhausted and you don't want to do anything. Then you get a phone call and someone says, oh, you want to come out and dance? And you go, oh yeah. And all of a sudden this energy comes. But you were just wrecked 5 minutes ago. And then you go out and you party all night. And it's
a choice, because it's a choice that we make. I'm with you. Procrastination is just a choice. The phrase for my coaching training was, you're always winning the game that you're playing. Full stop. Whatever game you're playing, you're always winning. So whatever you're doing, you're winning. So whether it's if you are just avoiding making a phone call, or avoiding doing something, you will find yourself doing other things. And it's that having that moment to stop yourself and go, okay, what actually am I doing here? But it's training yourself to ask yourself those questions.
Do you think it is in that moment we're talking about midlife crisis, where again, because a person's gone through this process of living someone else's life effectively, or doing what they were told to do, and not really thinking about what it is that they wanted, and then when it stops, and midlife crisis is actually an awakening where they go, I don't have to do what I thought I had to do. I can do whatever I want. And then that process of 2 to 5 for women and 3 to 10 for men, because we don't listen as much, whether it's this process of working out, okay, and it's learning to drink the water that's right in front of you. Do you think that's what that midlife crisis process is?
Yeah. Well, I think that is the most positive way to think about it being a creation rather than a crisis. And I think there's a bit of a depending on where you're at in that time, where your kids are, if you've not had kids, or if you've not had kids, I also question whether it's as much of a crisis as it is for other people, actually. Because if you have had children, you are sort of following a pattern, aren't you, of school runs, kids stuff, until a certain age when they can go off and do their own thing. So there is like a defined path if you are a parent. But I also question then, if you're not a parent, do you follow the same? Is it the same, or do you still have those same feelings? Do you still have, or do you just carry on? I say there must be so many different kinds of midlife stuff. But I guess it all comes down to confidence to just go, okay, brilliant, what can I do now? What's next? What do I really want to do? Who am I really? Who do I want to be?
So do we need to change it from midlife crisis to midlife creation, or midlife awakening, or something like that?
I think just drop the word midlife altogether and just call it a
transition.
Just
an awakening. I'm going through my awakening.
Yeah, that sounds a bit.
I'm rebirthing.
No, you can't do that. I won't let you do that. I think I call it reinventing. I call it reinventing. Reinventing. My whole thing is reinventing midlife. So the word midlife gives me an allergic reaction, because I am firmly in my midlife, but I don't feel like it. I feel better than I ever have done. So I just think I just would love every woman to, and from a woman's perspective, to change how she feels about this part of life, and to change, because it won't just change it for us, it'll change it for our generations coming through. So I don't want my daughter to get to this age and go, Mum, why didn't you tell me? This is dreadful. So our mothers perhaps didn't have the inclination or the research or the tools to fly the flag to say, you can do this differently, but we do. And I think that we have a responsibility for people coming through to go, you know what, this part of life is outstanding.
How do you? I mean, is that something we want to set up beforehand with them as well, saying, "Hey, life is part of a journey." And
I talk to my daughter about this all the time. Oh, she's so bored of me. Yeah, Mum, you're stopping right now. So you've got to pick your moments, don't you? But yes, I think this stuff should be taught in schools, because I really do. I think that life phases should be taught at schools. But the problem is that, as we all know, because we've all been there as impetuous teenagers and, early 20s, just go, is you don't think, you're so arrogant, you don't think you need to listen to anyone else. Yeah. And I think that every time I've done talks at my daughter's school for the sixth formers who are about to go off to university or jobs or whatever, they are so sure of themselves that they don't really want to hear what other people have got to say. I think you've got a fine line, haven't you, of education? Yeah,
definitely. So it's an interesting thought as to how we go through this reinvention, or how we awaken. And is that, part of that, I'm going to come back to that point of, do we need to be teaching people how to make their own decisions for themselves and decide what's right for them, and go, okay, you can be doing this at this part of your life, and as a teenager you might be going out and doing whatever, and then when you become a parent, there's certain ways of doing that, and you can do that in a whole. Parenting doesn't have to be the end of the world. It certainly wasn't for me. It was like that was so much flexibility in doing things, and I still remember my son was 4 months old when we took him to Switzerland, from Australia, and he was perfect on the plane. And and had two daughters with us as well. And we never had those restrictions. It wasn't the children a restriction. We just did it, and it was fine. It was really good, and I wouldn't change that for anything at all. And is it this process of going, hey, one, like yourself to start with, and then it's not this, you need to find yourself. It's, you can choose.
Just be yourself. Just be yourself.
Choose to be, exactly. I love that. Choose to be yourself. I'm going to write that down. Choose to be yourself.
how often do we want to be, are we trying to be like other people? Like Oscar Wilde said it beautifully when he said, stop trying to be like everyone else is taken.
Oh, exactly. And I say, if you try to be like everyone else, if you try and be like everyone else, the best you can hope to be is average.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I like that. It's like average scared. It's like, it's
yeah. There's nothing average about us. So yeah, I think that you've got to go. Actually, that's actually a really good point as well. By the way, is that if you think about the normal curve, the
bell curve
population, the bell curve, so you've got the big. The fact that we do what we do means we're not in the normal average. Part, and perhaps that's why we're able to ask questions of ourselves and to do things differently and to be ourselves all the time rather than all the things we've talked about so far. I think perhaps to really make massive change, a global change, you've got to work on the masses of the average mindset of how to change that mindset into one of creation and reinvention rather than think you've got to do what everyone's always done.
I love it. And with that, from that perspective, you talk about the masses and worried about what other people think. And part of that is people wanting other people to like them.
Yeah.
And I love it. A friend said to me once, he said, I think it was she. I can't remember who it was. I just know someone close to me said it. I can't remember who it was now. But they said, how can anyone possibly like you if you're not being yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Because who are they liking if you're pretending to be somebody else?
Yeah, I thought that was really profound when I heard that. I wish I can remember who said it. They'll remind me because they'll hear me saying it, and they'll say it back to them. I told you that. But I thought that was really profound. I'd never thought about it from that perspective of if you're not being yourself and you want people to like you, how is that even possible? Any wonder you've got anxiety.
Yeah, well, but absolutely. I mean, you just got to ask yourself the question: is it really? Have we overcomplicated things so much, and are we caught up into a world that wants to label everything we feel, and there's normally a drug attached to that label just to make us feel better, because of the industry.
Sometimes those drugs are not available over the counter either.
That's very true. But is it just as simple as our anxiety would go if we just started to be ourselves and totally believed that that's enough? Because then you go right back to how many people have you heard saying, I don't feel enough? And I just say, well, enough of what? Like enough of, what do you mean enough? Because everybody is the same. There's no one better than, right back to how we started. There's no one better than anyone else. You are enough. It's a choice whether you feel that or not. But how much anxiety is created by all of those things we've just said?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the irony I've found, because I really have to thank my mum for this, because I've really taken it to the extreme. But I've got the caveat on it. I don't care what anyone else thinks, and I'm doing what I like to do. But the caveat that I have is I behave nicely.
Yes.
And from that, it's amazing how many people that I've got in my life that are just really kind and loving and will go. I had with an organisation and wanted to get some stickers made for an organisation that I'm helping out with, and I called around a couple of printers and just through the conversation they said, oh, we'll do that as a charity, if as a pro bono, in the sense of that organisation can help us this way, so we won't charge you anything. They proposed it. I was like, I went, cool.
I get that.
I'll do that.
I absolutely get that. I mean, just be kind. The theory, if you come from a kind place, a kind attracts kind. Like attracts like. It's to say be yourself and do it with kindness, because being yourself should never hurt anyone else. Because
if you're a good person inside, and you are,
if they choose to be hurt by it, then that's different.
But even if you say something where someone goes, oh, I don't get that, but if you can stop and go, hang on a minute, how have you interpreted that? Because my intention is good.
Exactly. I think that's
the two people in the supermarket. Don't say sorry. What are you offended by? I'd like to understand.
Yeah. Well, I I often think that what people say out loud is a reflection of how they feel about themselves.
Yeah.
So they, maybe someone's saying sorry because they feel they've taken up space that they shouldn't have taken up. And then you go right back to they clearly don't feel themselves.
I love yeah, exactly. I love that the definition, the Wayne Dyer definition, where he talks about it's like playing volleyball. Someone says, "Oh, you didn't call it 6 o'clock." He says, they're hitting the volleyball tee. Now you can take that, smear it all over yourself, and go, "I don't have to call it 6 o'clock, or whatever." Or you can say, "You seem to be upset that I didn't call it 6 o'clock. Tell me about that." You just hit it back. But you don't smear it all over yourself. And that's the other point with that, because I was looking at people going, "Oh, I've got to defend myself. I've got to, get that respect." And I'm like, and I'm thinking, have you looked at yourself when you're trying to berate someone back? It doesn't look respectful.
No. I come from a place perhaps where I used to be that girl who used to desperately wanted people to like me and felt low in confidence and was good at what I did, but felt really back years ago, back in my corporate days, felt all those things. Yeah, felt all those things that we've talked about. And the only thing that changed it was for me to work out who I was in a way of who do I want to be. It's kind of feel like you've got a bit of a blank canvas. Every single day you wake up, you can decide who you want to be. You don't have to go on a retreat. You don't have to go on X, Y, and Z to make that decision. You might need help to keep it going. That's why coaches exist. And you might need the practical stuff what a coach does, but you don't actually need any help to decide that you want to be someone different, as in I'm going to be me because that I have not been me, but what does that look like? And I think that's the big question people struggle with, is when they've been trying to be something else for so long, how do they suddenly work out who they actually are?
That's where
there's a film there's a film, a stupid film, The Runaway Bride, with Julia Roberts in it.
I haven't watched it, but I know of it.
Well, she clearly is going to get married to various people, and it's all about the kind of eggs that they cook for breakfast, and that she likes the eggs that they cook. And at the end, Richard Gere says, "Well, what eggs do you actually like?" And she doesn't know, because she's just liked the eggs of other people's. And the metaphor being that, what eggs do you actually like? Because when you can work out what eggs you like to eat, you've found out who you are.
And that's where I take it from that extra step and saying, well, you can enjoy any eggs you want.
Well, exactly. You don't have to label it, do you? So it's to say I am being me because this is who I am, and let's get on with it, shall we? I don't need to define myself.
But that's exactly that point. The other point I was going to, or question I was going to ask you in relation to that, because I found when you talk about people needing to get help, and I when I was younger, I went and got some help, and I studied neurolinguistics, and studied all these different things, and did all these courses. But I also met with some professionals as well, trying to work things out, and did some hypnotherapy, all that kind of stuff. But today, I don't do that at all. But I'm spending so much time with having discussions with someone like yourself, or I'm helping other people. And I found in that helping of other people, I actually learned so much myself. I get myself involved. There's a number of organizations I'm involved with, helping them move forward. And in doing that, because I'm helping there, it makes me feel good about myself. And therefore, I don't need to have those discussions. Is that a point where we can get to? Is that, like my friend said, you learn through pain until you learn through joy?
Yeah. But what those 2 points say is that you've done the work already. So you actually have done the work. So that work has been crucial. I've done the work as well, and I've trained as a coach to do it. And I've got a master's degree in leadership and strategy to do all of that. I've done neurolinguistics just like you. I've done all that work from my own. It was all driven by my own personal desire to be better, to understand me more, so I could be more me. And that's I did it for. And so, but now you got that bit there, then you've got how do you just give value as much as you can, because you get value back, and that value back that you're talking about is the value it gives to yourself personally. You feel valued almost, probably, for giving value, which is helping you grow.
Exactly. I mean, and you feel helping other people, you get the dopamine, you get the serotonin produced in your body, you feel good. It's a high. A friend of mine in Texas put it. I mean, he used to do drugs, and he said, the giving high is much higher than any drugs that I've ever taken, and it doesn't have a downer.
Exactly. Yes. Oh yeah, God, that's fascinating. It's fascinating his journey to get to that place where he's from a drug addict or not addict, but someone who took drugs, to get into the place of just giving back gives me everything and more. I think it's really valuable, and actually something that we don't talk about either. Giving back is I feel sometimes it's overused as a look at me, I'm giving back. Well, what does that actually mean? Are you actually giving back, or are you, how are you sharing your value with the world? And it's a big thing, isn't it? But I agree with you. Yes, I think that's part of the midlife thing as well. Is all the wisdom that we've created through our lives. How can you share that with people who are about 5 years behind you?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that giving thing, it reminded me when you're mentioning that of what I'm going to quote my mum, but she said, "Don't give because you feel you have to. Give because you want to."
Absolutely.
Don't give because you want something in return. Give because you want to.
Yeah. Well, because if you give because you want something in return, then that's power.
It's not giving either.
It's not. It's power. It can become emotional abuse if you're not careful, because it's power play. I've given you this, and if you don't give me it back, then I'm going to be not very nice to you. That's a dangerous place to go to. You got to. And that's one question I'd say to anybody: if you're giving because you want something back, then just please don't do it. Yeah, that's like gifting, isn't it? It's the whole gift giving.
And it's fun. It's the irony with that is because it's same token too. I've done things, because I wanted to help people, there's things I would have liked in return, but I wasn't expecting in return.
Yes.
And whether they did or didn't matter. But it was a genuine, I'll give, and and I do this with a number of organizations, and this is how I work with a lot of clients, is I'll it's that free offer, I help out, and that kind of thing, show you that I can do this. I don't expect that they get anything back, but it's amazing that relationship that it creates. And some people don't give back. That's fine. I don't treat that as, you should have given back because I gave to you. It's like, okay, I gave, and it's a genuine gift. If it creates a relationship, an ongoing relationship, then that's great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I get it.
I treat it as a genuine gift. But it's amazing how much that what I've found is the actual return becomes much more than what was given. Just really weird. And so don't do it with the intention of expecting it. But when I say expecting it, I generally think, it just happens. Now, I don't, how do I phrase this? I expect that it's going to happen, but I don't expect that it should happen. Maybe that's the way. Because I
think it comes down to a mindset as well, though, that kind of thing. So if you come from a perspective of having a mindset full of lack, so nothing's ever enough, then when you give, you expect back, because that's a lack perspective. Yeah. Because if you come from a place of having a growth mindset, you will give because you just want to give, and that's where it ends for you. And if anything comes back, that's a nice bonus. But because you're coming from a growth perspective means that you just want growth is your thing, and how you can grow, the world grows.
Yeah, I think the way that as you were talking then, I was thinking about it and going, well, actually what it's more like is a spiral, whereas I make that initial thing, and it can be as simple. It's funny how it happens. I'll just smile at someone at the street as I'm walking down, and especially they look at you, a lot of people look away, and I look at, and when they look at, I smile, and all of a sudden you see their face lights up. It's really cool. And then they smile back, and I feel good because of that. But it becomes what I was thinking, it was like a spiral in the longer term relationship. That's a walk past someone, you don't see them again. Maybe you do, but anyway, for the purpose of that example. But in those other relationships that develop, it's like, I'm going to help you, and then they go, and then they find a way of helping back, or even if I ask for help, they want to help, and then I help them back again, and it creates a spiral where we're both adding value to each other, and it spreads out where there's a whole community helping each other. That's kind of the life I live. We're all kind of helping each other in some way, and it's a really really cool thing to be able to, call on people and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And they go, "Yeah, yeah," because you made that investment, so to speak. Not that you're expecting something back, but when you do need help, people are more willing to help you as well.
Well, we have a personal trainer, like a family personal trainer at the moment, and she's Zimbabwean. She's 24.
Yeah.
She works at our local gym, and she was telling me, I've not seen my husband's spent time with her. I've clearly not at the moment, and she said that her family, they love Zimbabwe. They absolutely adore it. Her family's still there, and even though it is a ridiculous place to do business, they have their own farm, and the taxes are ridiculously high, and la 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 la. But how they work is they make sure that they give use of all their farming kit, the tractors, whatever else they need to their community. They will lend out everything that they've got to the community to help, so that when they are being forced to close the farm for whatever reason, sanctions, tax sanctions, whatever is going on, the community go, "No, you can't do that, because we need them, because they lend us all their stuff. They are heart of the community. Therefore, they will always be all right." And actually, the extreme version is what you're saying, is that it's a value, it's giving value, it's a trade of value, which is where money came from at the end. That's where money came from, isn't it?
Actually, that's a good point. It's trading value. You're helping out other people, they help out you, and it becomes a bit of a cycle.
And that is exactly
something
where
is that part of that process that we, as you get to that midlife, you start to become aware too, because it seems to be a lot of people that go through that midlife crisis, when you look at it, the ones that I've looked at, they've been fairly focused on their own life, doing their own thing, not really giving back.
Where I think perhaps yes. I think
is that too general a statement?
Yeah, I think that it's pretty very general. But actually, I think that the more so like I do quite lots of days of school, and I'll go and do talk, I'll go and share. I'll just go and share what I've done. I'll do it for lots of different places, for nothing, because I really believe I can add some value, because it's not maybe my core business, or not exactly what I do, but I'm really good at it, and that's giving back. And like you say, the more you give back, the more sort of goodness comes out generally. And I think that one of the top tips, if you just Google midlife crisis, how to overcome it, one of the top tips is to volunteer. Because
because as I was talking about that, and I mentioned my two midlife, quote unquote midlife crises from when I was younger, when I think about those two times, I was more thinking about myself as opposed to helping others in those periods.
Well, because I think that's a wisdom point, though, isn't it? Because you're younger. It's what, so when we come back, circle right back to the beginning, when we hit midlife, which is why I use the word reinventing. So when you hit midlife,
when you hit reinvention, switch.
Hit your reinvention, yes. You look back and think, but you look back and think, I've done so much. I've had a baby. I've done different jobs. I've experienced my mother's death. I've gone through a divorce. I've done all these things. Why can't I deal with this now? What is it? And that's the difference, is you've hit a point that feels insurmountable. And that's the big difference with the midlife thing, the reinvention thing, is for some reason, there's no big thing that's going on that's making you feel this, but you're feeling like something big is going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And part of that, maybe that feeling is so big, is because you're focused inwards as opposed to outwards.
Well, yes, because if you say I'm going through a divorce, that explains why I'm feeling like I'm feeling. It's dead. It is logical, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can explain why you're feeling emotions. I've hit 45 and I'm feeling like this, and I can't explain it. There's no reason. You can't. You think, hit 45, that's my big drama. It's not a drama. It's an age. It's nothing. Yes, it's because you're focusing in on yourself rather than thinking, okay, well, what does this mean? How can I change? What decisions can I make differently? Maybe I need to change my diet or my fitness, and then that'll help my energy, or take iron tablets, or think about HRT or whatever it is that's going on. And then that bit's done. Then what can I do? How can I go into my next phase of life doing something incredible? And that's kind of where I always go with this.
Yeah, I love that. I know you've got to run because we've pretty much hit the
Yes.
time here, and you've got to go and pick up your daughter. So I won't hold you up too much. But what do you think is the one key takeaway from this? From it, is midlife a myth or reality? And how do we? Well, I think from what we're talking about is it's not midlife now. It's a reinvention period. You're the
Yeah.
caterpillar turning into the butterfly. It's the butterfly experience.
It is in it's better, actually. And you don't want to be a walking butterfly, do you? Because butterflies aren't meant to walk; they're meant to fly. So,
Yeah. How's that? That is so cool.
I
Yeah,
think that
don't be a walking butterfly. You're meant to fly. I
I
love
think
that.
that that kind of sums it up, really, doesn't it? So I think you could probably take out the words myth and reality and just call this a reinvention,
Mm,
and how you're
yeah,
going to be the butterfly that flies, not walks. And if you want to then drill it down a bit more, it's about how you practice feeling confident and how you just be yourself.
yeah. Practice being confident and be yourself. And
Mm,
you can choose who you want to be.
completely. You can choose what you want to be at any moment of any day. There is no schedule. You don't have to put it in your diary. 4 o'clock, I'm going to choose to be someone different.
Yeah.
It's just, I think if everybody got that, if everybody really took away that you can make a choice at any moment, any time, nobody can take away your choices in your thoughts. You are 100% in control of them, and that is the magic. It really
And I
is,
love what you
actually.
said before. I choose to be, well, you said choose to be yourself. And if you were to rephrase that from yourself, for yourself, I choose to be me. Or I
Yeah.
choose to be myself.
Mm.
It's like, yeah.
And because we are all completely enough and confident and exactly who we're supposed to be at any given moment.
Yeah, I love that. You are completely enough in any given moment. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Alex, I'm so glad that you're recovering very well. It's always
Thank
lovely to
you.
chat with you. Thank you for
And
being on the
you.
show again.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.